The Story of Santa Cruz by Alfred H. Miles. B.Y. Robert Southy. About the middle of the year 1797, Nelson hoisted his flag as Rear Admiral of the Blue on board the Theseus. This ship had taken part in the mutiny in England, and being just arrived from home, some danger was apprehended from the temper of the men. This was one reason why Nelson was removed to her. He had not been on board many weeks before a paper, signed in the name of all the ship's company, was dropped on the quarterdeck, containing these words: "Success attend Admiral Nelson. God bless Captain Miller. We thank them for the officers they have placed over us. We are happy and comfortable, and will shed every drop of blood in our veins to support them, and the name of the Theseus shall be immortalized as high as her captain's." While Nelson was in the Theseus, he was employed in the command of the inner squadron at the blockade of Cadiz. During this service, the most perilous action occurred in which he was ever engaged. Making a night attack upon the Spanish gunboats, his barge was attacked by an armed launch, under their commander, Don Miguel Tregyan, carrying 26 men. Nelson had with him only his 10 bargemen, Captain Fremantle, and his coxswain, John Sykes, an old and faithful follower, who twice saved the life of his admiral by parrying the blows that were aimed at him, and at last actually interposed his own head to receive the blow of a Spanish saber, which he could not by any other means avert. Thus dearly was Nelson beloved. Notwithstanding the great disproportion of numbers, 18 of the enemy were killed, all the rest wounded, and their launch taken. 12 days after this rencontre, Nelson sailed at the head of an expedition against Tenerife. In this disastrous expedition, which took place in July 1797, Nelson was much embarrassed by difficulties of wind and tide, but though foiled in his plans, still felt it a point of honor to make some attempt to capture the town. Perfectly aware how desperate a service this was likely to prove, before he left the Theseus, he called Lieutenant Nisbet into the cabin that he might assist in arranging and burning his mother's letters. Perceiving that the young man was armed, he earnestly begged him to remain behind. "Should we both fall, Josiah," said he, "what would become of your poor mother? The care of the Theseus falls to you. Stay, therefore, and take charge of her." Nisbet replied, "Sir, the ship must take care of itself. I will go with you tonight, if I never go again." He met his captains at supper on board the Seahorse. Captain Fremantle, whose wife, whom he had lately married in the Mediterranean, presided at table. At 11 o'clock the boats, containing between 600 and 700 men, with 180 on board the Fox cutter, and from 70 to 80 in a boat which had been taken the day before, proceeded in 6 divisions toward the town, conducted by all the captains of the squadron, except Fremantle and Bowen, who attended with Nelson to regulate and lead the way to the attack. They were to land on the mole, and thence hasten as fast as possible into the great square, then form and proceed as should be found expedient. They were not discovered till about 1:30 o'clock, when, being within half gunshot of the landing place, Nelson directed the boats to cast off from each other, give a huzzah, and push for the shore. But the Spaniards were excellently well prepared. The alarm bells answered the huzzah, and a fire of 30 or 40 pieces of cannon, with musketry from one end of the town to the other, opened upon the invaders. Nothing, however, could check the intrepidity with which they advanced. The night was exceedingly dark. Most of the boats missed the mole and went on shore through a raging surf, which stove all to the left of it. The Admiral, Fremantle, Thompson, Bowen, and 4 or 5 other boats found the mole. They stormed it instantly and carried it, though it was defended, as they imagined, by 400 or 500 men. Its guns, which were 620-pounders, were spiked, but such a heavy fire of musketry and grape was kept up from the citadel and the houses at the head of the mole, that nearly all the assailants were killed or wounded. In the act of stepping out of the boat, Nelson received a shot through the right elbow and fell. But as he fell, he caught the sword, which he had just drawn in his left hand, determined never to part with it while he lived, for it had belonged to his uncle, Captain Suckling, and he valued it like a relic. Nisbet, who was close to him, placed him at the bottom of the boat, and laid his hat over the shattered arm, lest the sight of the blood, which gushed out in great abundance, should increase his faintness. He then examined the wound, and taking some silk handkerchiefs from his neck, bound them round tight above the lacerated vessels. Had it not been for this presence of mind in his stepson, Nelson must have perished. One of his bargemen, by name Lovell, tore his shirt into shreds and made a sling with them for the broken limb. They then collected 5 other seamen, by whose assistance they succeeded, at length, in getting the boat afloat, for it had grounded with the falling tide. Nisbet took one of the oars and ordered the steersman to go close under the guns of the battery, that they might be safe from its tremendous fire. They pushed on for the Theseus. When they came alongside, Nelson peremptorily refused all assistance in getting on board. A single rope was thrown over the side, which he twisted round his left hand, saying, "Let me alone, I have yet my legs left and one arm. Tell the surgeon to make haste and get his instruments. I know I must lose my right arm, so the sooner it is off the better." The total loss of the English, in killed, wounded, and drowned, amounted to 250. Nelson made no mention of his own wound in his official dispatches, but in a private letter to Lord St. Vincent, the first which he wrote with his left hand, he shows himself to have been deeply affected by the failure of this enterprise. "I am become," he said, "a burthen to my friends and useless to my country, but by my last letter you will perceive my anxiety for the promotion of my son-in-law, Josiah Nisbet. When I leave your command, I become dead to the world. I go hence, and am no more seen. If from poor Bowen's loss you think it proper to oblige me, I rest confident you will do it. The boy is under obligations to me, but he repaid me by bringing me from the mole of Santa Cruz. I hope you will be able to give me a frigate to convey the remains of my carcass to England. A left-handed admiral," he said subsequently, "will never again be considered as useful. Therefore, the sooner I get to a very humble cottage the better, and make room for a sounder man to serve the state." Not having been in England till now, since he lost his eye, he went to receive a year's pay as smart money, but could not obtain payment, because he had neglected to bring a certificate from a surgeon that the sight was actually destroyed. A little irritated that this form should be insisted upon, because, though the fact was not apparent, he thought it was sufficiently notorious, he procured a certificate at the same time for the loss of his arm, saying they might just as well doubt one as the other. This put him in good humor with himself and with the clerk who had offended him. On his return to the office, the clerk, finding it was only the annual pay of a captain, observed he thought it had been more. "Oh," replied Nelson, "this is only for an eye. In a few days I shall come for an arm, and in a little time longer, God knows, most probably for a leg." Accordingly, he soon afterwards went, and with perfect good humor exhibited the certificate of the loss of his arm.